Yes, welcome in. It's been a minute. Back on the camp. Obviously, basketball season going hard. I got sick. You got sick. Here we are. We are back and ready to go. We have some breaking news that happened before we did our show for the first time. That's a new one, Jesse. I like it though. I do appreciate it. Wisconsin announced Wednesday morning, that they are going to be opening the season a couple of days early, August 28th. They're going to be playing against Miami, Ohio at Camp Randall in a night game in prime time. I'm sure it's going to be beautiful weather, and I can't wait.
I have no reaction to this other than it gives me the weekend. They've played Friday night, it feels like, every year for a long time. So what difference does it make if they move it up to Thursday? It just means that they get to start practice maybe a day earlier, and the stage is kind of all to themselves.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone's going to be locked in on Wisconsin and Miami of Ohio on August 28th. Preseason games going on. I'm sure the focus will be just a ton on Wisconsin. But yeah, they are getting an opportunity to play on a national stage to open year number 3 under Luke Fickell. We are going to talk a little bit about Luke Fickell. Also going to talk about Brady Collins and the strength and conditioning program. Jesse had a chance to sit down with both Luke since we've done a show. Also had an opportunity to sit down with Luke and then also with Brady. And those stories are up on The Athletic, so check them out. I also had a chance, while Jesse was unfortunately sick, to talk with Kenny Guiton, Wisconsin's new quarterbacks coach, former wide receivers coach. So that interview is coming up here in a little bit. About 20 minutes talking about the quarterbacks, and obviously had to talk a little about the wide receivers as well, and some of the guys that he's expecting to be impact players on the outside. And Mark Hamper mention, and a Tyrell Henry mention, and a Cayenne Barry Johnson mention. So a lot of Joe Griffin as well. So a lot of things to get into with him, and we'll do that in a minute. But I wanted to start with some latest on the winter workouts, because you had a chance to talk with Brady, and the title in your article when you had a chance to talk with Brady was, he's working to get the program back to, quote, what it should be. What does he think it should be?
Obviously, what it should be is a program that didn't just finish the year 5-7 and miss out on a bowl game for the first time in 23 years. I thought it was a really interesting conversation with Brady. It was in his office for more than an hour, and I get what the comments are going to be like in these kinds of stories, the same way they are for the Luke Fickell story that I know we'll also address at a certain point, and that point is beyond now, or happened previously, I suppose. You can only say so much. It doesn't really matter what you mention in February or March because you haven't won enough games. But these guys still have to try and find answers and make some changes behind the scenes to help this program get to that next level. And Brady, I think, was pretty open and honest about some of the shortcomings, certainly with what they saw on the field, but maybe what he can do better to help motivate these guys. He's not going to overhaul his strength and conditioning program that he spent a decade plus honing just because Wisconsin went 5-7. I know people look at the last 5 games and say, oh, they were out physicaled, and so this is Brady's fault. And yes, he takes responsibility for what happens on the field because he tries to prepare them. You need players, you need scheme, but he looks at it more from motivating them. What can you do to help them spend more time together? And I understand that there may not be a direct link people may not see the direct link of how do you win games against Iowa because you're taking pictures when you're out on a frozen lake in February. But I think he's done a lot of things to try and get this group together. As we know, transient college athletics world, there's 41 new scholarship players at minimum coming in this roster. So how can you get them together so they feel this sense of ownership in what they're trying to do at Wisconsin? So that's part of it, obviously. But yeah, he knows what they've put on the field so far is not good enough.
So when you talk about getting those guys out there and, pictures, and that's not going to win games, right? But it's the idea behind those gatherings that bring a team together. And again, I think we both know that people are probably sick and hearing this type of stuff, right? Talk only takes you so far. The action is what matters. But this other stuff does actually matter. The off the field stuff does actually matter. And I'm not talking about just strictly in the weight room. It's being cohesive as a team and being there for guys. And when things aren't going right, guys aren't just going to quit if you have each other's backs, and building that, I think, brotherhood, however you want to talk about it. It's a lot more difficult for guys to give up if they have a bond with the guy that is either lining up next to them or on the bench next to them, or you're practicing against them. It's so much easier to be able to call guys out and keep them engaged if they all believe in each other and want to be around each other and, for lack of a better term, our family.
Yeah, again, I know that some people will look at that and say, wow, what a cliche. But also in team sports, when you've got the best teams, this stuff really does matter. And it's a separate discussion for, do you have talented enough players to get Wisconsin to the college football playoff or be a Big Ten title contender? Okay, that's fair too. But from Brady's perspective, he spends as much time around these guys as anybody. We don't know really what goes on in January and February, and obviously we see the Squat Fest, but he's the one with the window to it all. And so a couple good examples that he gave me. Yes, he asked these guys when they're not in the football building, send him a picture whenever they're together. Doesn't matter what they're doing. Maybe they're out to eat at a restaurant. Maybe they're in their dorm room. Yeah, maybe they're on the lake when it's frozen and having a good time because Riley Mallman sent him a picture with a half dozen dudes just having fun. But he tries to do very small things, not only to motivate, but to create this togetherness where, for example, on last Friday, there's 15 freshman early enrollees, and he had each of them come in for a 6 a.m. workout, and they were paired with a veteran who played their position. He called it kind of like big bro, little bro lift day. But that stuff can matter. And even like Ben Barton, defensive lineman, 6-year guy who decided to come back. He's a student teacher. He has to be out of the building so he can student teach at 8 a.m. Well, that meant he had to go lift at 6 a.m. The defensive line group, so he wasn't by himself or didn't have to do it with a different position group, opted to join him at 6 a.m. because they understood what his circumstance was away from the football building. So those are things that I think can make a difference. And then there's the motivating piece, which I also found interesting because we know what happened the last 5 games. 2 of them, they played reasonably well, could have beaten college football playoff teams, got embarrassed the rest of the way against West Division teams, including losses to Iowa and Minnesota against their 2 biggest rivals. And Brady has specifically designed workouts every single time they meet that incorporates the number 42 for the number of points they gave up against Iowa and 24 for the number of points they gave up against Minnesota, so they don't forget it. He said, I want them to effing hate it at a certain point, but also embrace it of these are the things that we need to do to get back to being the program that Wisconsin is capable of being. So I think a lot of it, much like with Luke, is being realistic about where you are.
And we're going to talk with Brady here as we get closer to spring ball, or maybe in spring ball. I know he's been on a few other shows, so wanted to give a little bit of separation between that and get a little bit into spring before bringing him on. But I hope that there's at least a mention of the 10 and 7 in those games as well.
Yeah, the lack of offense is not ideal.
I mean, because we can talk about talk about here's the thing, we can talk about the defense and giving up 42 and 24, but go back to the games that you said they almost won or could have won. The defense wasn't the problem in those games,
right?
The Penn State and I know what he's doing. I understand the motivation behind in the points given up, but Wisconsin lost the games against their best teams because their defense because their offense didn't show up. And there are so many new faces on that side of the ball. So I don't know how much we sit here and say that's their fault or how much you hammer home at that, because it's going to be, different tight ends and running backs that maybe weren't playing as big of a role in those games. And, certainly the wide receivers with Vinny Anthony and Treshka Kahuna, but the offense was rather significant issues in those games as well, right? I mean,
yes, they know what the full score was. It's just that it's not going to be all that motivating if you have to do 7 push-ups. It's a whole lot more motivating if you have to do 42. But obviously, they know
7
they got
sets.
Ass kicked.
Should be 7 sets of
maybe that's what it has to be.
7 sets of 42, or no, kidding. 7 sets of 24, 7 and then 10 sets of 42. Just do them all. 420 push-ups every single time you go into the weight room. 420 push-ups.
There you go. You can be a volunteer strength coach on the staff.
Yeah, I'm sure that I think that's about right. I think that I think I'd be very, very good at it for sure. Clearly in my own life, I abide by everything that you should do health wise. But you're right. There's motivation involved in this as well, and they are good motivators. But when I look at some of the other things that he said one, you've got to have the right guys back, which we do, and then bringing the right guys in, which we definitely did. Are you as confident in that as he is?
Well, no, I can't be because I have a different job responsibility and have seen the product the last 2 years. And so you and I talked last offseason. I think we both very clearly learned from what offseason one was like here, where there was so much anticipation and excitement, and we bought into the newness, and it didn't yield any better result. They finished with the same record in 2023 as they did in 2022. So I'm not gonna right 7-6. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
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 So
I thought you
I'm
were going
not
to say,
gonna.
I thought you were going to, I thought you were going to say 2024 and 2023. That's
No.
no,
Yes.
it's all
No.
good.
Not worse.
Yeah.
But I do think I don't know if we're underrating the hire of Jeff Grimes. I do think that is going to be not having Phil Longo here and what that offense ended up being. I think is going to be a real big deal for this program, but that doesn't mean I think they're going to go 10-2, especially when you consider who they have to play. So they better be a better team in year 3. You've had a couple years now to tinker with some things, to realize whatever offense you had didn't work, to realize you need to get bigger on defense. But I feel like I need to see it, which is the same thing I said last offseason, and we didn't see enough of it.
Well, yeah, again, I think there were things that happened in the spring. They're like, ooh, all right. Well, that's gonna look pretty special during the season. I remember, Tretch had a really good spring, and he had a solid fall camp as well. It was a little quieter than the spring, but that was the case for the entire offense, which obviously should have set off warning signals about what it was going to be. But in the season, he was good, and I think he's going to be really good. But it wasn't the spring level of things that maybe that we saw, and especially offensively. I think that was the case, but it's all going to be wait and see at this point. I'll say what I see at spring ball, but I'm not going to say, oh, Tretch who had this amazing catch. Watch out for him this spring, or watch out for him this fall. It's going to be like, it was a really good catch. We'll see if he can do it in the spring, or you see if he can do it in the fall. We'll see if he can do this. Or, gosh, Billy Edwards Jr., you should have that bomb that he dropped right on Vinny Anthony. Looked really, really good. I guess we'll see in Thursday, August 28th, whether it's going to carry over to actual game action. I think that's where my mindset is now, more so than it was either of the last 2 years. Like last year, yes, it was wait and see, but you're like, oh, so gosh, that could be pretty special. If that may be pretty special. I expect him to have a huge year. It's a whole lot more wait and see for me, even more so than it was last year.
Absolutely. Think about the outside linebackers who were just dominant during stretches. Oh, John Pius and Leon Lowry, these guys are both going to have half dozen sacks. They're going to be huge playmakers. And for the most part, just largely non-existent and certainly didn't do what they were brought here to do. So I'm in the same boat as you are right now of like, even if there are great performances in spring, we've seen that the last couple of years too. It doesn't guarantee anything. And the same thing for fall camp. But I do think they've done a good job of trying to rebuild this roster with people that they think better fit what they need to do. And the fact that they've got an offense in place that feels more like a blending of the old and the new is important as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know there's a lot more to that article, but go check them out at The Athletic. But I wanted to jump into something else before we get to Kenny Guiton, and that is the inside info from Brady about some of the stuff that has happened, the numbers that people have been able to put up, whether it's weight gains or speed gains or whatever it is. You kind of broke it down in your article for Wednesday morning. And Daryl Peterson, you texted me on Tuesday telling me about the Daryl Peterson thing where he has put on quite a bit of weight. And again, this is another thing that I know people are like, who cares? show me when it gets to it. But these numbers, I think, the Daryl Peterson number really jumps out at you, and that is the weight that he's put on and what they're going to ask of him this fall.
Right. Yes. I mean, people I think do, if you're a Badgers fan and you're listening to us in March or for a football show,
you care about it. Yeah.
Right. You care about it. And so do get a lot of questions. Well, what's going on in the off-season workouts? And we generally have no idea because all we see are the short posts on social media. And so at least to have some concrete data from the guy who's running it gives you an idea of what they've been working on, how they're trying to tailor these guys to play in certain positions. And with Daryl Peterson, he was, I believe, listed at 248 last season. And according to Brady, he's in the 260 to 265 range. We know that Luke mentioned they want to get bigger, obviously on the defensive line at some of those edge type positions. And he said that Brady said that the plan here is for Daryl to have his hand in the ground for the majority of the snaps. Maybe he'll be stand up every once in a while, but that's not what they want of him. And Brady used the example of a guy like TJ Watt, who obviously can do a little bit of everything. But I think what he was referring to is someone who can have that finesse and that speed and those types of things to make a move on somebody and get around them. Daryl is a different type of player. And so he needs to know what his skill set is. And that sounds like that's how they're going to use him more this year, but significant weight gain for him. And really a lot of weight gains across the board, which are indicative of what they're trying to do up front, both defensively and on the offensive line, that wants to get back to being more physical.
Yeah, the Daryl Peterson number stood out, and then obviously the Tanner Koziel number does as well. This goes back to last year where it was like John Pius came in at this, and then, but with Koziel, he wants to play a little bit more. He wanted to play this style of offense, and to do that and maybe line up more in line, had to put on some weight. 20 pounds is a lot, especially considering how good of a playmaker he was at that previous weight. But what did Brady do? He showed him a picture.
Yeah. So Tanner came in he's 6'7". He came in at 237 pounds and he's now up to 257 pounds. Pro Football Focus put something out not too long ago on X about the highest graded returning tight ends. And it was Koziel, and Brady sent him the picture and said, "Who is this skinny guy?" Because it's a picture of him at Ball State from last season. And he's completely transformed his body, it sounds like, here in a couple of months, which is a good thing because you still want him to have that playmaking ability. We've talked about it before. He's the best playmaker they've had at tight end since Jake Ferguson here 4 years ago, just based on what he did statistically at Ball State. But we know that they want to be more physical. We know that one of the sets Grimes is going to use a lot are the two tight end sets, and him and Tucker Ashcraft are going to be involved a lot. And Ashcraft has gone from about 255 to 260, and those two guys work out together. So I think they're going to be pretty impactful for this offense next season.
I think the area, and you mentioned it a little bit with Daryl Peterson, the defensive line, I think that area is as important in terms of growing and getting bigger than any other spot on this team, because those guys got pushed around last year. The defensive line, not nearly big enough to be able to hold up. And we saw that play out against Iowa. We saw it play against Minnesota. We saw it play out against a lot of teams. They gave up way too many yards rushing, and they just didn't want to see that again this year. And so gone are some of the smaller guys that were here, whether through graduation or transfer. There's no Kurt Neal at, 290 and the shorter arms. He's down in Illinois. And you have guys like Ben Martin going from 308 to 325. You have guys across the board, and there's no more new faces. There's no position on this team that has more new faces than the defensive line, and for good reason. And all of them are big boys. Saw a picture of them. Oof, they are big. I guarantee that doesn't guarantee anything. You actually have to go out and stop the run and hold up and let your linebackers make plays. But when I look at the numbers and then you look at the guys, it's a much needed improvement.
You're right, Zach. They brought in 5 defensive line transfers, and Brady is very complimentary of a lot of that group. I think he mentioned specifically 4 of those guys, just off the top of his head. I kind of put him on the spot of give me some guys, but significant weight gains. And this does not mean that, again, because these weight gains are occurring, that suddenly they're going to be dominant forces that are taking down the top teams in the country. It is, though, indicative of what they've been able to accomplish here in the first 2 months to better position them to be more physical and stout to try and stop the run, to try and do the things they couldn't do late last season when, as Luke Fickell said, they fell apart. I know that Brady's very high on Charles Perkins, the transfer from UT Martin, who's now over 300 pounds. Corey Walker, the Western Michigan guy, was listed, I think, at 270. He's like 295 now. You mentioned Ben Barton, who Brady said has become one of the better leaders, not just in that group, but on the team, it sounds like. And it's not that they're going to expect Ben to play 50 plus snaps, which is what Brady said. Because if you look, Ben averaged 40 snaps a game a year ago, but there were, I think, 5 games where he played 50 plus snaps. That's why he went into the transfer portal. So you can have more depth, you can have bigger bodies. So certainly these guys are bigger. They're putting in the work. And the hope for this program is that it will translate on the field.
Not the only ones putting on weight. Corner Ricardo Holman also putting on, it's like 5 pounds, but for a corner, and his spot is important. And he's also running faster as well.
Yeah, Brady, very complimentary of Holman. We saw what he did on the field a couple of years ago when he had 7 interceptions, and he decided to come back for another year, bypass the NFL draft. There is some weight gain. Brady said he would watch him last year and was like, man, why is he so skinny? Certainly was able to be an effective player overall, but he's put on a little more mass. And Brady said they do this, they put the catapult thing on so they can kind of measure your speed. He hit 21 miles per hour, which Brady said that had not happened before. And so it feels like he's in position to be a better player. I don't know if they're going to target him as much as they did 2 years ago, but I think they felt like he could be a better tackler when he is targeted and be a better player in the situations that he gets. So physically, you have to feel good about the cornerback group, because if with him and Nizer Forkurian, that is a lot of starting talent returning.
Yeah, absolutely. The offensive line getting bigger as well, with Jake Renfro putting on some weight, and Riley Mallman as well. But I think the other one that stood out here in your article is that of the 15 early enrollees, quite a few have been able to really change what they look like just in this 2-month period where they've been under Collins' tutelage.
Yeah, this is no surprise. This is why you bring in guys early, because it's one thing to be in a high school weightlifting program or doing it on your own or with a trainer. And then all of a sudden you come into a college program, you have a guy like Brady Collins, you have a meal plan that you just don't have access to. And now dudes are gaining 20 plus pounds. Several guys have gained 20 plus pounds. Cooper Catalano is one. I believe he was like 199 and now he's 220. I remember talking to Cooper before he enrolled, and he said that was part of why he wanted to come when he talked to Landon Gauthier, who was an in-state enrollee at linebacker last year, about the benefits of coming in. Carter Smith was 179. He's 193 right now. That stuff matters. I'm trying to think there. Nick Clayton apparently has just been an absolute beast. He's up to 220 plus, like 222. So he's gained 22 pounds or so. And Brady said he ran a 4.640 for a 200 plus pound linebacker is pretty absurd. And I think Brady said that was the second fastest to Grant Dean. I think those safeties like Grant Dean and Luke Emmerich are some pretty fast dudes. So it's a very talented class, and it's the most they've ever had in terms of early enrollees, 15 guys. But this is why you do it, to put them on the path to success sooner.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Let's get to Kenny Guiton. I had a chance to sit down with him for about 20 minutes earlier this week. And we do welcome in as a special guest. It is a Wisconsin quarterback coach, Kenny Guiton. How does that sound, quarterback coach? How does that sound for you?
Man, sounds awesome. Sounds awesome. I appreciate you, man.
Obviously, for anybody that is unaware, probably not too many people that are watching this that are unaware, but Kenny's taken over as the quarterback coach after spending last year as the wide receivers coach. And I wanted to jump right into this because I know you talked with the media last month, a lot of stuff about how you became, or how you always wanted to get back into the quarterback room. What you mentioned something that jumped out to me, though, when you did talk with reporters, that Jeff Grimes, as he's coming in here as the offensive coordinator, that he was open to everyone's ideas, that he would listen and really take ideas into consideration. Is that a big change from your experience last year? That is this going to just be a more collaborative offensive staff, do you think?
Yeah, I think last year had its ups and downs, and things of that nature. But I think Grimes is just such a guy that's so thoughtful Everything that you do is going to be well thought out. Everyone that brings up an idea they have a voice, and it's just not just this past year, but any staff that you're on where you feel like, hey, maybe you can't speak up as much. It's just not the same, and not saying anything bad about the past or anything here, because I know we're moving forward and we got to acknowledge what's happened in the past. But at the end of the day, I think we have, and I think we're moving in the right direction in order to take this offense, this team, to the next step and where we all see it reaching. And so I'm very blessed and thankful to have a guy like Coach Grimes that just truly values your thoughts, value you as a person rather than a coach all the time, And so it's a pretty cool dynamic. I think it is very eye-opening for the entire room to see, and it makes everyone, be very much more involved because they understand that their voice is heard.
So spring ball is coming up here quickly. I believe as we're talking, it's 10 days away, right? First practice is the 13th.
Ready to roll.
Yeah. So we're going to have a chance to be able to see that a little bit. But from your perspective, what you guys ran the last 2 years, and I know you were only here for last year, but to what Jeff is and you guys are installing here, what are the biggest differences in your mind, and specifically the biggest differences for the quarterbacks going into this offense?
Yeah. No doubt. Well, I would say number one is just multiplicity. I mean, you got a lot, right? You got a lot that you can do in different personnels, and all those different things make different opposing defenses, different opposing defensive coordinators have to worry about it, no matter if you did it once or twice or you did it 1,000 times. They have to worry about it. And so I think the multiplicity of how we can do things, how we get to different plays, how we go about the aspect of running these plays, period. Just it's a little different. And the multiplicity that we have will set up guys in order to be more successful at exactly what they're really good at, and so I'm excited to see these guys get a chance to show that what their strengths are, play into those strengths, and put them into those situations because we have the multiplicity to be able to do that.
You do have some different, I don't want to call them bodies, but you have different skill sets, right, in your room right now. I just was wondering some of your initial impressions here of now that they've been through most of winter workouts of the 3 scholarship guys that you have in that room with Billy Edwards Jr. and Danny O'Neill and Carter Smith. So just Billy, we talked to Billy a couple of weeks ago, really engaging guy, really smart guy, feels like he has kind of just fit right in. But what has stood out for you about him so far?
Well, my number one things, period, just on the room alone, man, Billy included with Danny, Carter, and Milos, as he's a guy that was here in the past and have seen it all and know that where we need to go is number one, the intangibles, just the guys being great leaders, right? You get Billy who walks in for a 5th year and this is it for him. He has to understand that he has to lean on a lot of people that he hadn't had to lean on in the past. And so in order for that to happen, man, you just got to make sure everybody, has your back. And in order for that to happen, they need to know you have their back. And so just the things that they're doing outside of this building, getting together, the extra time that they put in together without us coaches in the building. And then you just see that camaraderie come out when we do get on the field, when we're in the weight room, we're in a running session, no matter what it is. And that's the entire room as a whole. And to be honest with you, that's probably the number one thing I've preached on since I've walked into the room is leadership and understanding that we play a position that's very dependent on everyone else that's on that field. And now everyone else is very dependent on us. So we have to make sure we take care of our own square, but also bring others along. So the leadership part in there it's been really awesome. And then the next one, I would say just the decision-making process in the room right now. I think we have some guys that truly understand ball. We have guys that's really trying to learn the game, whether it's just because they're young, whether it's in Carter and Milos, they're eager to learn the game. They want to know more. They want to know how to read defenses and why we run certain plays and not just, hey, what we have to do and things of that nature. So I think it's a good mix of, some experience, some playing experience in the room, whether older or a guy like Danny, who is still considered younger. And then you got some young guys that are eager to learn, that are eager to really step up and get a leadership role. And they know the only way that they're going to do that is by bringing people along with them and also handling their own square. And so it's cool to see how the older guys go about it, right? They've been in college. They got some experience. And, I may call Danny an older guy. We all know he's still young, but and I mean, all of them are young and in our terms, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But But in college terms, Billy has been through it. He knows what it's like. He's been to 2 different universities and seen the difference in coaching and difference in styles of play and styles of offenses. And now he gets the chance to walk into one that's very multiple and looking for a guy to take over. So he has to step up and be a leader in order to do that. And so I've probably talked about that more than anything, but it's good to see the guys step up and actually do that. And so obviously we hadn't reached the level we need to be at yet. So I'm going to keep pushing it and keep getting the guys there that we need to get to by the time fall comes. Long ways to the end, though.
What'd you say?
Long ways until then, though. We got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned leadership when you talked with the reporters last month. You mentioned a couple times here. What does leadership look like to you, and is it different for depending on who that guy is?
Yes, it's different, but and depending on the guy, everybody goes about it their own way, right? Like I want everybody to be genuine, right? I mean, if you're not genuine about it, people read right through that, and honestly, they tend to go the other way. But what I see as leadership is I see not only a guy that's going to speak it, but live it. A lot of the times I tell guys, hey, it's not about what you say but it's more about what you do. But then there is those times it's about what you say as well. When we're all going through a tough workout and everyone's tired, who's going to be that guy that can speak up and let the group know, hey, we're just okay, we're just fine. This is just the beginning. Let's finish stronger than we started. Who are going to be those guys that can speak up, but also live it and walk it as well. And that's not just on the field, that's outside the field, because these guys know y'all better than us as coaches outside the field. They know what you're doing on a Saturday and Sunday if you're actually putting in the work and putting the right things in your body, doing the right things that you need to do in order to succeed on the football field. And so guys know what they want to follow, right? So they know that the guy behind that center better be buttoned up and on his job. And look, it's probably a long definition for leadership, but leadership falls under a big umbrella, man. I mean, a big one, right? It's about what you say, about what you do, and it's about who you bring along with you.
For sure. And again, it really is guy by guy. Like Tyler Van Dyke last year was not necessarily a vocal guy, right? Like he was,
exactly.
Right. And so I think it all really depends. But so this is more of a big picture question for the quarterback room and just the college football landscape as it stands right now. Here are a lot of fans that don't like the one and done quarterbacks that that Wisconsin has brought in. Not the guys themselves, just the idea of the one and done quarterbacks.
I get it. Yeah.
With two complaints, right? One, by the time they get acclimated and by the time they learn the offense and they get rolling, they're gone. And then the two is it doesn't allow the young quarterbacks to grow and learn like the guys have in the past.
Yeah.
And then a lot of guys, if they don't get to play, and I know it's a different situation because there was a change in coaching and offensive coordinator, but there's nobody left outside of Milos from your quarterback room last year. So like if you don't play, you're going to move on. So those are two things. I'm wondering what your ideal situation is at quarterback, and how difficult is it now in this world to have what you actually want?
Oh man, I think the easiest one to answer is the ideal situation is development from within. You want a guy that you can bring in that's very talented, that has the right mindset, that works his butt off, that you can develop into a great player that one day leaves this place and a first ballot jersey retirement kind of guy. That's the main goal for everyone. And so in this day and age, it's tough, but it's just the way we go about it, man. It's who I know Coach Luke Fickell to be. You know what I mean? He's a guy that wants to develop, that wants to win from the high school ranks, right? Like we're still recruiting 20 to 23 high school guys a year, right? There may be some guys on this in the nation that hears that and they're like, we don't know. We don't know if that's what it is, but we're going to do that. We're going to still develop, and we're going to treat our guys right, build relationships with them that makes it hard for them to make that decision to leave, And so that's what I plan on doing in the QB room. Honestly, I've had to do it for wideouts where there's 15, 16, 17 guys in the room where I just feel as if I do have a kind of I don't want to brag on myself or anything, but a contagious kind of personality that hopefully guys want to be around and want to be coached, because I'm going to bring the energy every day and also bring the knowledge of the position and knowledge of the game. And so if you want to be pushed and you want to be great, had a chance to take over a university that's ready for it, let's go. Let's buckle up and let's roll, baby. Probably one of the biggest things that I can really, really, really applaud Carter Smith on. being a young guy that knows that, hey, man, I might not know as much as these older guys, might not get the landscape of college football as much as these guys, but, man, he is one competitive guy that just steps in, and he's got that little swagger about himself. Now, I got to get him out of cruise control, but when it comes to competition, I mean, you just see it, dude. He's the guy that steps up and want to compete, and so hopefully getting more guys like that's going to relish the opportunity to compete, because that's the number one thing you got to have. Got to have the right mindset, a guy that don't mind coming in and competing his butt off and not just expect to be the guy right away. And if they got that mindset, they'll allow you to develop them.
And he's showed that, senior year of high school, right? When he has the injury and he's playing through the injury because he wants to be there for his guys. I think that kind of shows the type of player he is, right? A little bit.
No doubt. Shows his mindset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
More than anything, that's probably the biggest thing. Like, yeah, you gotta have a mindset, man. If you're a tough guy, you do things the right way, and I mean, you just go hard all the time because you are tough, man. It just seems to work out for those kind of guys, right? Those guys just, at some point, they win, And if I'm not mistaken, I believe I got that one right now in Oak Carter. So I'll keep pushing to bring it out of them and develop the crap out of them and go from there.
Yeah. So like you have three, as I mentioned before, 3 scholarship quarterbacks in the room right now with Billy and Danny and Carter. Is that enough? And and what is the challenge of trying to add to that room? Because we just talked about you're trying not to upset guys by bringing others in.
No doubt. I mean, you're hitting it on the head. It's the the fight that you're fighting between, hey, yes, we need another arm. That's just not enough guys on scholarship. And, hey, you don't want to run guys off. So it's the kind of guy that you get to come in and do that. But honestly, the number one thing is being up front, right? Being up front and letting the guys know that's in the room right now that understand, like, hey, dude, just so y'all know, there's just not enough arms, period. So am I trying to jolt anybody's, situation or anything like that? No. But at the end of the day, yes, we do want a competitive room, and we do have to have enough people because, I mean, knock on wood, we all know what's happened the past 2 years here, right? And so we want to make sure we're taken care of, and we do. We feel as if we are taken care of right now. We'll be okay, but also we got to make sure of it, right? So at some point, us as a staff, we have to take care of the University of Wisconsin as well, and with you guys understanding that this is not to just jolt your situation. It'll be okay. Compete your butt off. And that's what I mean about getting the right guys with the right mindset. They should understand that as well. Hey, we do not have enough arms. We got to get another guy. It is what it is. We're going to compete our butt off and may the best man win.
I know that was something you mentioned. You guys were considering that fourth thing back in January. That's still something under consideration, maybe after spring as you head into the summer?
I think we have to. It's an ongoing conversation right now.
Okay.
It is, because we want to do it the right way. We do want to do it the right way by the guys in the room right now and by the team, period. And so we know bringing in the guy in spring, it's a little tough for that guy to miss spring ball. And like I told you, with the multiplicity of the offense, I mean, he'll be behind the curve a bit, which is a positive thing for the guys in there now, But at the end of the day, it's an ongoing thing that we have to make sure we do right and treat it right as we go.
So I know you're in the quarterback room now, but your quarterbacks are throwing to wide receivers that you're pretty familiar with, even though there are so many new faces in there. I'm wondering for you what this offense could do for a guy like a Vinny Anthony or a Tretch Kekahuna and some of those guys that we've seen be out there. And I know there's other guys that have come in, and when we talked to Billy, he mentioned a few of them, like a Jaden Ballard, running 22 miles per hour or whatever it was, just ridiculous, But what do you think this offense could do for Vinny and Tretch? Because it feels like both of those guys could be significant parts of the passing game.
No doubt. Well, just like you said, it's those guys and it's more, man. I mean, as we go through these times of leading up to spring ball, you just see so many guys that have strengths to play into. And it just goes back into what I said about the offense earlier. When you got multiplicity, you're able to move guys around. You're able to put guys in positions that normally defenses probably wouldn't see them in. So whether you're hiding that guy or you're just moving them around so defenses can't sit, dig their heels in and say, hey, this is where this guy's going to be 24/7. So I just think it's a chance to really play into the strengths of those guys, put them into situations that really they're successful in. I mean, I probably learned so much about Tretch in the last 2 weeks of the season, just moving them around more and things of that nature, seeing that, oh, man, no matter how big or small he is, he can get off a press, and things of that nature. And obviously, Vinny had his deal all year long, and
Right.
we get to see some of the things that makes him a great player is him being a decisive guy, getting it to him in spots and space to where he can just be decisive, kind of like an example, a kickoff return, right? He's got it in space, and next thing you know, he just is a decisive guy where if you think about it for 1 second as that kickoff team, he's by you. And so it's those same things that we can do for him on offense and turn a play into a kick return where, hey, you got it in space, go to work. And so it's those things that we can really play into the strengths of certain guys, man. And there's so many more that's stepping up right now that I don't even want to start naming. And like you said, I did coach them. So one or two of them will walk into the office and no, I'm just kidding. Those are my guys. And so they know how much I love them. And it's good to see some of them stepping up in the way that you expect them to step up. Honestly, that's the thing that I'm really excited about. And I've said this since last year, man, the versatility that's in the room. I mean, you just said it. We got some guys that are big and fast. Go run and be big and fast. We got some big guys that are really good physical, route runners or blocking, put hands on people, and it's tough for the, defenders to get off of them. Go be those guys. We got little slot body guys who you put them in space, man, you put them in a phone booth and they make people miss. So I think we got really good versatility. Variety in that room that we can really play into some strengths with a lot of our skill guys throughout the offense right now.
I know one of the guys that you were kind of not on, but a little bit with Cayenne Barry Johnson last year. You had to be on him a little bit, right?
Yeah.
First semester of college, go to class, right? Yep. But like he's another guy that got some playing time late in the year because of injuries. And I don't know that we got to see a ton of what he's capable of, but he feels like a guy that could, him and Tretch in the slot could be a nice 1-2 combination there.
No doubt. I mean, that's just a guy that's just scratching the surface. He's my guy. I don't think he get mad about anything I say, but he had to grow up, man. He really did. And it's still some growing up in there to do. But man, when I tell you a guy that he just loves football, he loves football. So put him on the field. He's going to learn. He's going to try his best to do what's right, and you give him a chance to be in the spotlight, man, he just never shies away from it. So it's going to be something special to see. Need him to keep growing, keep coming with the right mindset, with the right maturity behind him. And even with Coach Reed being here, he knows me. I'm going to be on him 24/7 anytime I hear anything. And so he's basically got a, like, I know we all coach them all, but he's basically got 2 coaches because I'm coming for him every day. And then, last one for that slot room as well, man. I mean, Tyrell Henry stepped up, dude. He's been a guy that's, man, I mean, I've been so proud of his progression throughout this winter. And just, man, I'm excited to see what he does this spring. And like I said, I don't want to start naming because I know I'm going to miss somebody, but that slot room is looking very, very strong. And on the outside, it just looks like we got a big variety. I mean, we hadn't even talked about a Mark Hamper, Joe Griffin. I mean, it is some guys out there that has different personalities, different strengths and traits that we're going to play into, and we're going to put them in the right situations to go succeed. So I'm excited to see it.
Question about Joe Griffin, because, he was successful and productive at Boston College, and then obviously comes here and is not eligible. Would he have played last year if he was eligible? Like, would he have been able to contribute for you guys last year?
It's hard to say. I would think he would have worked himself in there. I think he would have been, got himself healthy enough to be out there. And, I mean, look, he's a guy that's 6'3", 210, 215, and 205, whatever he is right now, and just a physical specimen. So, we can't wait to see it. He's got to get out there, got to get healthy, and go put it all out on the field and compete his butt off.
Yeah. All right, last one for you. You've been around Luke Fickell a lot, whether as a player, in the past year as a coach, and I'm sure the time between being a player and a coach, you had contact with him. With the way things have gone these first couple of years, do you sense any additional pressure that he's feeling heading into this spring and into this third season? Do you sense anything different?
Just, speaking overall, right? Not just Coach Fick. I think Coach Fick is going to be Coach Fick because he has the right formula. He does it the right way. He's a great man, great individual. So I know what's about to happen this season as we get this thing turned in the right direction. But just as a coach in general, you're never not feeling a little antsy, a little on your
Sure.
toes, a little. It doesn't matter how the year's going, man, and it doesn't matter how the past season went. You know that it's only about what have you done for me lately, and so we get where we're at right now. And I just feel like as a coach, man, you're always gonna, be on the edge of your seat, be on your toes, be ready to roll for no matter what the situation is. Yes, some situations bring a little more pressure than others, but I just feel like we got the right man at the helm that's going to be a guy that he does it the way he's always done it, and we've all seen what that's done for him in the past. This won't be any different, and for the people in the building, it won't be any surprise at all. So we'll keep working our butts off, keep doing it the right way, acknowledge where we're coming from, and we know that's the only way you're going to get to somewhere new, and work our butts off to get to where we want to be.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Kenny, looking forward to seeing you guys here in a little bit over a week, 10 days here to see what this new offense is going to look like and see all the new guys that you have out there. But I do really do appreciate your time.
Man, me too. I can't wait to go see it, dude. Been very, very fun. I mean, these last 3 months of being back in that room, dude. I mean, hopefully y'all feel it. Wisco fans, as I get a chance to talk out, man. And dude, I can't wait. I can't wait to see it all and go to work and keep building, man, because I think this is going to be a lot of fun. And I know it's going to be a lot of fun. And we can't wait to show off the offense as well. Let's do it.
All right, man. Thank you.
All right. You have a good one. Thanks for having me on.
All right, there he was, Wisconsin quarterbacks coach Kenny Guiton. He's really an engaging guy, and I know we missed you on the interview, of course. Always miss you when you're not around, but he was very complimentary of what the quarterbacks have done to this point. I did think him talking about Carter Smith was interesting in that when it's a competition, there's nobody that wants to compete more than he does, and he rises up for everything like that. And we kind of saw that in his game in high school when he was hurt and was still out there and leading guys, even though he could barely throw the ball, couldn't even lift his arm to throw the ball, and was still leading them to a win. But also said he has to get him out of cruise control, which I think, essentially it means when there's not competition, we got to get him going all the time and not just when he's fighting for whatever that it is on that particular day. But intrigued by him, and obviously intrigued by the other two as well, and some of the wide receivers that Kenny Guiton spoke about as well. So certainly did appreciate his time. Before we get out of here, I wanted to talk a little bit about your article with Luke Fickell, right? Which is now a couple weeks old.
Last week.
All right, sorry.
Still relevant. Sorry. Hasn't been any football played.
Sorry, apologies. And I think we talked about this when you came on the morning show that I was doing, that the opening line of the story and the two words that stood out: arrogance and delusion. And I don't know that those are words that I would have ever expected to come out of Luke Fickell's mouth when we were sitting here 2 years ago. It's a rather stunning change, and also kind of where he's at when it comes to this program right now.
One thing I appreciate about Luke Fickell in the offseason is his willingness to acknowledge what happened, what went wrong, and maybe there will be an offseason here in the near future where things go a little bit better and the perspective is different. But it's been very difficult for him, as we've discussed throughout these couple seasons, to come up with answers immediately after a game. And I can understand that, because you're 15 minutes from getting off the field and getting hammered against an opponent, and we're asking you questions about why hasn't this worked. You haven't looked at the film. You haven't necessarily had time to sit back and assess everything. That's why I like talking to him before spring practice, when there is a little bit more perspective. And so he used the word arrogance in reference to himself and also this program. He said, when I walked in here, I was arrogant in the sense that I thought we were the best team in the Big Ten West. And because of what we'd done as a program for 15 years, 25 years, everyone in that locker room thought we were the best in the Big Ten West. And very clearly, we are not. He also used that other word, delusion. It's in a similar vein, but one of the times he referenced that was when they got to 5-2 last year, that there was this certain level of delusion that they thought they were better than they were, and obviously went on to lose 5 games. And as he described it to me, they fell apart. So he owns up to that. That's on him. You and I have talked over the first couple of years of his tenure that for as much as he talked about what this culture was and what Wisconsin was, of his understanding it from afar, from being at Ohio State, it didn't really mean he knew what it was like here. Because how can you, realistically, no matter what you think you know or how long you're in a Big Ten at another program, you've got to come here and be a part of this, especially in an era where things are changing so much. Now he's experienced it for a couple of years. And so much like the Brady Collins story, there is a point here with Luke where I know fans are going to say, it doesn't matter what you say. We're tired of whatever the talk is. You have to go win games. He understands that too. But it's also important for the head coach to have accountability, to talk about what went wrong, to talk about what could be fixed in year 3. And so I really appreciated his candor there. And obviously he had a whole lot more to say about what hasn't gone right and potentially what needs to be fixed.
What do you think's at stake for him, not just this spring, but this year, going into year 3? It's not like, look, I think we're both on the same page. He's not going to get fired after this year. That's not going to happen. Unless it's like a 1-11 or 2-10 disaster. That's not going to happen. So what's at stake for him in 2025?
Well, a lot is at stake, obviously. I'm with you. I think, much like we've discussed, you don't make a move like this with the financial ramifications unless you give someone presumably at least 4 years. I mean, we said before Scott Frost got into his 5th year. Now maybe he had engendered a little bit more good nature at Nebraska because of his past at Nebraska. And Luke doesn't have that at Wisconsin. But you're trying to build a program. You're trying to build and sustain momentum. How can you do that if you don't have any winning seasons, or if your only winning season is 1 game over 500? And I know it's going to be extraordinarily difficult, but I think it's building something for the long term to try and set yourself up for the future. Like, that is kind of the big picture, what's at stake here. And there are so many small layers that go into trying to do that when you bring in players. And Luke talked about this. He said he put the schedule down in front of guys. If they were coming back, if they were from the transfer portal, he said, showed them the schedule. And he said, if your ass isn't ready for this, then this is not the place for you. And he said, maybe we lost some guys because of that, but I'd like to think we brought in the right ones. He understands how difficult the task is. And I also think, you know, at this point, the majority of guys are Luke Fickell guys. So it's like excuse making to say you didn't have your personnel or whatever. But I still get the sense in talking to him that he's felt like they didn't have enough people that were ready for what this challenge was going to be. That's his sense of it. And he's talked multiple times about this idea of this isn't the Big Ten West anymore. I remember you and I talking about this, I think, after the Nebraska game. But he knows that if it was the Big Ten West, they wouldn't have won last year. They got hammered by the last 3 West Division teams. But what he's meaning is, I think he's trying to reframe it of, yeah, it's harder now, but you also have to start beating the teams that you used to beat just to give yourself a chance. And so the challenge now is greater than ever, and you have to have people that are willing to understand that and go attack it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. And I definitely think that if Wisconsin is going to be able to do that, it's going to be on Luke Fickell getting those guys to buy in. And you're right; it's not all Luke Fickell guys yet, but it's pretty close. I think there's 15 scholarship guys left from Paul Christ. Most of them going to be pretty big contributors this year. But it is certainly a situation that you look at and you're like, it's a really tough one going in. But when he has what we've seen these first 2 years, you need to see some kind of improvement. You need to see some kind of development offensively and defensively, where it's maybe you're not winning those games, but you're at least being competitive. They were competitive against the best teams they played last year, except for Alabama, competitive against everybody else that was really, really good, but then got their doors blown off because some guys maybe weren't all the way bought in after losing those games. They couldn't get them back up for what I think a lot of fans consider even bigger games than, Penn State and Oregon, losing the way they did to Iowa, losing the way they did to Nebraska, losing the way they did to Minnesota. Like, those are things that fans don't stand for. Like losing to Oregon, losing to Penn State, okay. But losing the way you did those other 3 games, it's just not going to happen. And so it's a huge task. and one that we'll see how it plays out here over the next weeks, months, and into fall camp and into the season. So the Badgers are going to be holding their pro day coming up on Friday. Then they're going to be holding their first practice of spring coming up next. What is that? Next Thursday? Next Thursday, right? Yep. So we'll be back. I guess that's all I can really say at this point. We'll be back, and we'll not be necessarily being off for as long as we have been since the last show. But appreciate Kenny Guiton stopping by, and Jesse, thank you very much.
Thanks, Zach.
All right, there he is, Jesse Temple from The Athletic. You've been listening to The Camp.